The last time you were here, we talked about some of the economic, the situation in the country, specifically as it related to wage growth. And even as we've seen fairly steady job growth, we continue to see very sticky, stagnant wage growth. And you indicated that that is partly a result of low productivity, even though over decades, even when we had higher productivity, we saw very unevenly distributed wage growth. And you mentioned that we need to do more in the way of investing in education, job training, whether it's things like apprenticeships, 2-year community colleges, 4 years. And I know you've made comments about that recently. And I hope as we look at the budget here in the United States Senate, we keep that in mind. And additionally, the need to focus on modernizing our national infrastructure, which is another area of productivity growth where I think we could make some progress. And I wish, in fact, we'd started here in the Congress working with the White House on that kind of bipartisan initiative. So I may follow up with you on that. My questions do relate to some of the comments made by the ranking member. Senator Brown reminded us that on the eve of the financial crisis, most people were predicting sunny skies and clear sailing. Didn't see the storm clouds ahead, and that's why we put in place some of these safeguards, these guardrails to try to make sure the economy could grow, but without undue risk in the system.
Yes.
And that obviously is the subject of ongoing debate now. So I just have a couple questions relating to the guardrails, the safety procedures we put in place. Orderly liquidation authority that was part of the Dodd-Frank. Do you believe it's important to maintain and preserve that provision?
I believe it's essential to maintain orderly liquidation. We saw during the crisis that the absence of a way to resolve a non-depository institution, a systemic financial institution, in an orderly way led to a massive intensification of the crisis. Now, I agree that bankruptcy should be the preferred route for resolving a firm that's in difficulty, and Congress in Dodd-Frank mandated living wills, and that we should work on the ability to resolve these firms under the bankruptcy code. I believe we've made a great deal of progress in getting firms not only to file these living wills, but also to think systematically as in the course of their regular business, how they need to be organized to make them resolvable in the event of distress. We have put in place rules to ensure the most systemic firms have sufficient gone concern loss absorbency that they could be recapitalized by bailing in debt holders in a situation where they encounter substantial losses. But while bankruptcy should be the preferred route to resolve such a firm, Title II is a very important safeguard. We can't know exactly what the circumstances would be at the time that a firm encounters distress, and that is a very workable approach that I believe we absolutely need.
Thank you. One other question relating to some of the safeguards that were put in place, because some have proposed eliminating either the leverage ratio or the capital buffer. Former Governor Tarullo said not that long ago that applying a simple leverage ratio to banks in exchange for allowing them to escape Dodd-Frank's capital standards would allow banks to ditch safe assets in favor of riskier ones to boost profits. In other words, he and many others have said it's important to maintain both of these measures in order to prevent undue risk in the system. What is your view?
So I agree with that. A simple leverage ratio basically imposes a capital charge on a junk bond that's identical to the charge that's imposed on holding a Treasury bill. And that type of system can result in banks taking on a great deal of risk. So I believe risk-based capital should be the most important form of capital regulation, that's what should be binding, and I see a leverage ratio as a backup catch-all that's there as in a belt and suspenders approach, but it shouldn't be what drives decision-making in firms. So we have strong risk-based capital. We now have an enhanced supplementary leverage ratio that applies to the most systemic banks. These two things do need to be calibrated appropriately so that the risk-based capital is what's binding, and we are looking at the calibration of that supplementary leverage ratio because it may be that it is high for example, it affects the custody banks and may be having some unintended adverse consequences, but both need to be in place and they need to be appropriately calibrated.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.